Okay, here we go. So this week we're going to start talking about input validation, which is, well, we're going to learn what it is here in a minute, but it's basically it's just protecting your program against bad data being typed in by the user. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. I want to go over the assignments real quick. So you have 2 assignments that are due a week from Sunday. So the assignments are really this week. Okay, so it's the week 7 assignment, and I pushed one of the week 6 assignments dealing with arrays and parallel arrays. I pushed that a week, and we're going to do some examples on those parallel arrays today, so that you can kind of get a feel for how we're using those. So 6B is going to be due, and week 7 are both due on March 15th. Okay, which is a week from this Sunday. It's at the end of your spring break period. How you spend your time doing that is up to you. I sincerely hope that you do something fun during your break instead of going to class. Maybe go outside and take a walk or something else. But if you, so you don't have to come to class, but you still have to get this work done. Okay? But you have 2 weeks to do it, and it should be doable. Please work on it early so that you can finish it and enjoy your break. Okay? All right. So. First thing I want to do is I want to do some discussion around parallel arrays. So we have, let me pull up that. Let me pull up those slides, and let's talk about parallel arrays. Let's do an example in parallel arrays, and then we'll talk about the homework from last week. So I think there's a parallel. So we talked about parallel arrays being this, right? Where in parallel arrays are where we have multiple arrays that each hold one piece of data, where the matching elements between the arrays are related to each other. Okay, so here in this example on the screen, we have assignments and grades. Okay, so in the assignments array, we have project 1, project 2, project 3, test 1. This would be the name of the assignment, and then here in grades, we have 195, 90, 87. This would be the grade for that particular assignment. Okay, so in this case, the grade for project 3 is in the second element. Okay, the element number 2 here, and so it would have matching, the grade for that would be an element number 2 here of a 90. Okay, so when we say the arrays are parallel, we mean just that. The elements between the arrays, the matching element number between each of the arrays is related to the other arrays. Okay, so in this example we have a list of salespeople. Their names, we have the number of sales that they made, say in some time period, say it's a month, and then the number of sales dollars. So in this case, Jane, she's in element number 1 here. Jane had 50 sales, and Jane had $10,093 in sales. Okay, so we can say once we identify any one of these values, we can say who had $8,765 in sales. Well, we can say it's in position 3 of the array. So it was Roberta that had 3. So we can go between the arrays. Once we find an element in one array, then we can look up the corresponding element in the parallel arrays and infer more data. Okay, so we can begin to use these parallel arrays to begin to store more complex data structures. Okay, so for example, this might be the sales record for a store of some kind. Okay, you could say store the grade book for a classroom, okay, using parallel arrays. Okay, parallel arrays is just one approach to do this. There are lots of ways to store data structures, and so in this class we're going to be focusing on parallel arrays as that method. Okay, so pay attention to parallel arrays and get good at it, because we are going to use it a lot from here on out. Okay, the last several weeks of the class is really just assignments building on more and more complex parallel arrays. Okay, using while loops and if statements and doing aggregation across the arrays. Okay, So this is a key concept because it's a data structure. We write programs because we want to use those programs to manipulate data in some useful way. Okay, so if you once you learn how to store and manage data, we're just going to use that over and over and over and over again. Okay, so we need to get good at this. So pay attention to it. So you'll have one assignment this week, which will be using parallel arrays, which is the 6B assignment. The rock paper scissors is really more about input validation and is not really using parallel arrays. But going forward from there, there's going to be arrays and lists in every week's assignment. Okay. All right. So let's do an exercise. Let's see, min and max. So here's an exercise on a parallel array. Okay. This says create a program to prompt the user for names and assignments of grades. Store the data in 2 parallel arrays. Use a for each loop to print out a report card showing each assignment and the final average. Okay. Now, because these are arrays, we have to kind of predefine the number of assignments we have, or we have to ask the user how many assignments are there. Okay. Then we'll do a for loop. Okay, to prompt the user for a grade name and prompt the user for a grade assignment. Okay. And then we'll do a for each loop where we'll iterate over the set of parallel arrays and do some output. Okay? So let's go ahead and do this. And then we'll look at last week's homework, and then we'll talk about input validation. Okay? First thing I'm going to do is do a REPL. C#. We're going to call this week 7 in class. Parallel exam. Let's see. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do this. And I left my water bottle in the other room, so we're going to take a break here in a minute for me to go get that. So first things first is we're going to define our parallel array. Okay, so I'm going to hear okay. So we have names and we have assignment names and we have grades. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is define some arrays to store that data. Okay, so my names are going to be what kind of data type? So names are strings, right? So I'm going to have a string array, and we're going to call it assignments. Okay, so it's a string, and I declare it as an array using the square brackets. Okay, so it's a string array data type. Okay, we'll call it assignments. Okay, and I'm using a plural here, in that the assignment is what's inside the array. It's an array of assignments. Okay, so I'm naming it as a plural because it's holding more than one. And then when I iterate over it, I will think of the things that I'm iterating in each element as an assignment, and I might even use that as a variable name in some of my work. Okay, so I'm very consciously naming it with a plural name. Okay, and I'm not going to instantiate it yet. Okay, because I don't know how many there are going to be, so I'm going to prompt the user for how many there are going to be, and then I'll instantiate the arrays. Okay. Now for my grades are going to be what kind of data type? An integer, right? So it's an integer array, and we'll call them grades, also plural. Okay. Now I'm not going to do full pseudocode here. I'm just going to make some quick notes. Okay. Prompt user for number of assignments, and create arrays. Okay. Then I'm going to say for loop to collect assignment name and grade, store in arrays. Okay. Then here I'm going to use a for loop to print report card. Okay. So I didn't really do pseudocode there. I just left myself some notes. Okay. This is what I'm going to do. Okay. And if I think of something else that I want to do that I think is important, I'll make a note of it. And then I'll come back and do it later. Okay. I've written these down. I do it sometimes in prompts. You can do it on a notepad if you want. Really, the important thing is to just write it down so you don't forget to do it. but get it out of your head so you don't have to think about it and remember it. Okay. So first thing is prompt the user and assign for prompt the user for the number of assignments and create the arrays. Okay. So we're going to do a prompt. So we've done this dozens of times at this point. A prompt consists of a write line and a read line. Okay. Console.writeLine, how many assignments? Okay. The answer is going to be an integer value. Okay. And here we're going to say integer number equals convert.toInt32 console.readline. Okay. So now the contents of the variable number is now the number of assignments that I have. So now I can create an instance of my array. Okay. So now I can say I've defined it up here in line 5. Okay. But I can run it here and I've defined it here in line 5. Now I can actually create the instance. Assignments equals new string array of number. Okay. Let's see. Did I start the recording? Yes, I did. Okay. So now I've created an instance of my array. Okay. Remember, an array is an object. It's an array of strings. It's not a string. Okay. And I have to create it either by telling it how many elements it's going to have, or using a list initialization. In this case, I don't know what's going into the array, so I'm just going to create it using the number of elements. So I prompt the user for how many elements do you have, and then I create an instance of the array. Okay. In our previous examples, we just used a literal value here, a 10 or a 5. Okay. But in this case, the user's telling us, and we're using a variable. And I can do the same thing for grades. Integer array of number. Okay? All right, that part's done. So now if I run this, I've typed some code, so I'm going to run it. Okay? Why do I run it? Because I want to make sure I haven't made typing mistakes, spelling mistakes, I don't have any syntax errors. The code's not done, but I want to run it over and over again so I can compile it and make sure that the logic I have written is running well. I'm getting some warnings here, because I've created some variables that I haven't used, but that's fine. Those will go away over time. Okay. So this says how many assignments, and I'll say 10, and then my program ends because I haven't actually done anything. But I prompted the user for that value. I created the instances of the arrays, and that code seems to work. Okay. Okay, everybody with me? Need a little more time? All right. Mike, are you about with us? You about there?
Yeah.
John, you ready?
You can go ahead.
Semicolons, blocks, or spelling. It's going to be one of those. What's your error message? So you're probably missing a parenthesis or a block somewhere. Is line 15 the end of your program?
No, I expect
Yes.
So it's in my console, right?
You're probably missing a semicolon, missing a close quote maybe. Parenthesis.
Good.
We'll try that. It says setting the unexpected symbol is open parenthesis. So So all of this just has to go inside. Okay. All right. Okay. So we've done the first part. So now let's go ahead and do the second part. This for loop to collect and assign the name and grade and store in the arrays. Okay. So I'll come back. I'm gonna delete these comments and clean up my code and delete all those comments. Okay. So I do a for loop. So what are the bounds of my for loop? I want to start at 0, right? And I want to go until what? If my user tells me I have 5 assignments, I want to start at 0 and I want to go till 4, right? So I want to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 because those are the elements in the array. Okay. So I'm going to do a for loop from 0 to less than number. Okay. So we do for. Here I'm just going to do counter equals 0. Counter less than number. I'm not doing less than or equal, I'm doing less than. Okay? And then I do counter plus plus. Okay? Okay, so now inside each loop, I'm gonna just prompt for the assignment name and the grade and store and then collect from these. So I really just have console.writeLine, console.readLine, and I do that twice because I'm just doing 2 prompts to the user. Console.writeLine, enter assignment name, enter name for assignment, and we'll say counter. Okay, and we'll use some interpolation there. Let's go back and put my $sign right there. Okay. So now that's my prompt. So I'm going to say enter the name for assignment 1, 2, 3. Okay. Actually, this is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to just do a +1 there. Okay. So because I want my counter to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I want the user to be told 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, because people start counting at 1, even though the arrays are 0 based. Okay. So now I'm going to do a read line. But where am I going to store the data? I'm just going to read it directly into my assignments array. So I'm going to say assignments at counter equals console.readLine. Okay? Because it's a string value, I don't need to do a convert on it. Okay? And I can assign it directly into the counter element of my assignments array. Okay? And when I type this, I say assignments at counter. Okay, so this is how I'm describing this. This is the assignments at element counter. I'm using the element number is inside the square braces, but I'll read that as assignments at counter. Okay. And then I do a second one for the grade, console.writeLine. Enter grade for and let's just say, here I'm just going to use assignment at counter. So now I'll just parrot back the name of the assignment that they gave me. Okay. So this is going to say enter the name for assignment 1, and then I'm going to say enter grade for test number 2 or special project. Whatever I typed in, I'm just going to parrot back. I'm going to echo that back. Okay. And then. Oh, I do need to, yes, do no, because it's counter here. Okay, because here I'm displaying it to the human. So when counter is 0, I'm going to want to display a 1, but here I actually want to display element 0. Okay, because I'm using element 0 here, but I'm going to add +1 to the user when I display it. Okay, now I'm internally, which one is more complicated, right? It's probably more complicated to do the adjustment internally than to do the adjustment for human readable. Okay, so I'm going to always use the unadjusted number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in my code, and I'm going to translate that for the human if I need to do that. Okay, because maybe I have a different kind of interface, and maybe I'm on a website, or I have, or there is no human. I'm reading from a file. Okay, so in that case, I want to keep the use counter in the way that's most meaningful to me as the programmer, because I'm reading the code and then translate it for some external source when I need to. Okay. Okay. So now I did the write line, so now I can do the read line. Again, I'm just going to read straight into the grades array. So grades at counter is going to equal, I want an integer, so I'm going to have to do the convert. Console.readline. And we're done. Okay. So now if I run this, I'm going to run it again because I want to make sure it's compiled. I've made a mistake somewhere. It says line 17, the name assignments does not exist. I spelled it wrong. Okay. So that's why I run it, right? Because to make sure I get those syntax errors, I don't keep going until I solve those syntax errors. Okay. I don't type more code. I don't just skip it and say I'll come back later. I stay here until I solve those syntax errors. Okay. If I keep going, the errors are just going to pile up. Okay. So I always want to run the program, compile it, get rid of the errors, make sure that what I've done is working. Okay. So how many assignments? Let's just do 3. Enter his name for assignment 1. Oh, I misspelled assignment there as well, so I can go ahead here and fix that in my code. Enter the name for assignment 1, and we're going to say homework. Okay. Enter grade for homework 100. Enter name for assignment 2, test. Enter grade for test 90. For assignment 3, final. Enter the grade for final 92. Okay. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to space this out a little bit. I think I'm going to put a blank line here after I enter the grade so that each of these dialogues will be spaced out a little bit. So here I'm just going to do console.writeLine. I'm just going to put a blank line there. So now when I run it, enter grade for assignment 1, homework, enter grade for homework 100. I get a little blank line there, so it's just easier for me to read. Okay. So even though I'm in a console and I don't have very advanced or complex outputs, I'm still going to try to format it so that it looks nice. Okay. So that it's easy for me to read and easy for your user to understand. Okay. And again, I'm taking care here to only enter valid numbers. I'm asking for a test grade. It's an integer. I'm only going to enter an integer. Okay. If I enter something other than an integer, I'll get an error here, which will be the segue into our next topic, which is input validation. Okay. All right. So now I have created 2 parallel arrays. Okay. I've prompted the user for how many assignments there are. I've collected the names and grades for each assignment, and I've stored them in an array. Okay. I'm going to go back and do some cleanup, get rid of some of my comments there. Okay. And here, just for grins, I'm going to just print my arrays out just so I can see what's in them. And I'm just going to console.writeLine string.join with a comma and assignments. And then I'm just cut and paste that and do the same for grades. Okay. So if I do this console.writeLine is just a little bit of debug. It's just a sanity check. Let me make sure that I'm actually getting the data that I expect into the right arrays. Okay. And I am. So here's my string.join homework test final 187.75. So my arrays have the right data in them, so my code is good up until this point. Okay? I'll let you catch up to there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got one.
Okay, one for F21.
Okay. Saying,
So you're missing the ending block on your for statement, which should come right up on it.
so right here.
See, because this is the opening block here.
So right there.
So right there. So what was happening was it was interpreting this as the ending block on the for statement.
Yeah.
This is the end on the main, and so you're missing the one.
Okay. Gotcha.
So let's see if that. Now you have some other. Okay. Counter does not exist. So here you have to declare what data type it is before you use it. That might be helpful. There you go. Awesome. John, you ready? Do this.
Jose, good.
Okay. All right, let's keep going. So I've printed out the contents of my arrays, and I'm satisfied that that I'm collecting the data appropriately. Okay. So now I've built parallel arrays. Okay. So now assignments and grades are a set of parallel arrays. Okay. In this case, there are two arrays. One has the name of the assignment. One has the grade. Okay. So now what I can do is I want to print out a report card. Okay. So I'm going to go. I wrote these string.join. I'm not going to keep them. I just put them in there as a sanity check to make sure. So I don't need those. So I'll leave them for now, but I'm going to come back and delete them later. And then to do my report card, I'm actually going to do a little bit of a module here, just so we can practice modules again. Okay. And I'm just this is not a function. There's not going to be a return value. So I'm just going to send my two parallel arrays to a module, and then print out a report card. Okay. So I'm just going to say report card, and I'm going to send two arguments, one of assignments and one of grades. Okay. And then I'll start a new method down here. This is going to be public static, and what's the return type? Since there's no return type, so it's a void because this is a module, not a function. Okay, we'll call it report card, and it takes two parameters. One is a string array called assignments, and one is an integer array called grades. Okay. So now it's a for loop. So I'm going to do a for loop to iterate over my parallel arrays. Okay. Now notice the way I said that. A for loop to iterate over my parallel arrays. That means I'm going to write a for loop. It's going to run for the number of elements in each array. Because they're parallel, it's the same. They have the same number of elements. And then whatever is inside my for loop, I'm going to do for each set of elements in those arrays. So that's called a for loop to iterate over the arrays. Okay? So I can start here by using a for loop, for, okay, and I just declare for loop just like I do anything else. Counter equals 0, counter less than. Now, my ending number needs to be the length of the parallel arrays. Now, it doesn't matter which one I use. I can use assignments or grades. Because they're parallel, they're the same length. Okay, so I can use either. Assignments.length is my limit, and then it's going to be counter plus plus. Okay. So now I have a for loop that iterates over the array because it's going to run. The for loop block is going to run once for every element in the assignments array, and because assignments and grades are parallel, I'm iterating over that set. Okay. So now we just do some printing. Okay, so I'm going to print the name of the assignment, and then I'm going to print the grade. Okay, so let's just say console.writeLine, and let's do some interpolation, and let's say we'll have the name of the assignment. We'll say assignment at position counter, and then we'll do let's do a tab. Let's do two tabs. That's a \t. That's going to be a tab character, so it's going to space over a little bit, and then I'll write. Well, I left out my closed brace there, and then here I'll open and close the braces, and I'm going to write grades at counter. Semicolon at the end, and I'm done. Okay. Now when I run that, I get an error because I misspelled assignment. So this is at line 25, and I used assignment.length. It should be assignments.length. Okay. And I did the same thing here in my right line, assignments at counter. Okay. How many assignments? 3. Homework, intergrade for homework, 100. Tests, and intergrade for tests, 98. Final, integrate for final, I had a 75. Okay. So these two lines are my string.join, okay, which I can get rid of, okay. And then I have homework, and then I have two tabs, and I have my grade here, tests and two tabs. Now the reason that that these aren't lining up exactly is because I'm using tab based here, because the length of my first assignment name is longer, so it's screwing up my tabs. So to fix that, we would have to do a lot of string checks and things like that to figure out how long the longest value is. And so we're not going to do that. I'm just going to, for sake of expediency, just use assignment names that are all about the same length. Okay? Just so it loads up nicely. Okay? So now what we need to do is just format this up a little bit and make it look nice. Okay? So first things first is let's get rid of these string.joins. Okay? Because these lines here, right? These lines at 18 and 19 are printing out these two lines in my console. Okay? That was just a debug sanity check. I don't really need those anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and delete them. So get rid of those. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the console.writeLine goodbye just because it's messing up my output. Okay. So now here, I want to put a nice little header on this. So what I want my output to look like is I want it to say assignment like this, and then maybe grade. Okay, and then I want maybe a little dash line here. Okay, and then I want it to say homework 100, and then I want it to say tests 95, something like that, right? Okay, so that's kind of what I'm going for here. So I'm just going to format that up in my write lines here. So okay, fix my indentation. So here I'm just going to do, outside my for loop, I'm just going to do some console write lines to print out the headers. Okay, so I'm going to do assignment. I'm going to do 2 tabs, and I'm going to do grade. Okay. And then here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to do dash line, and I'm going to do 2 tabs, and I'm going to do grade. Okay. So that'll be my header. That'll be my header pieces right here. Okay. So when I run that, how many assignments? 3. Homework. So homework is 8 characters long. Okay, so when I type the names of the others, I'm just going to put spaces in them to make them all 8 characters long, so everything lines up right. Okay, so that's just an expedient workaround. Normally, you would have to measure the lengths of the values and line them up. Okay, what's your grade for homework? 100. Tests, that's 5. 1, 2, 3 spaces just to make it the same length. Inner grade for tests, let's do an 85 on the tests. Inner name for assignment 3. Final, and I had an 89 on the final. Okay, and then my output lines up nicely there. Now we could do more. We could maybe do an average here at the bottom and do some other niceties on the output. But I think the purpose of this was to explore parallel arrays, and so I think we've done that. Okay, so I'll give you a second to catch up here, and then we'll keep going. Okay, so now that we got this working, I'm going to change it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete my comment here because I don't need that anymore. Okay, now here instead of saying report card, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a function called lookup. Okay, and it's going to be assignments and grades. So I'm going to send the arrays. Okay, and I'm going to delete report card. Okay, so now in my lookup, let's go ahead and define that method. Okay, so I need to be careful here. I'm going to put that method after my report card method. Okay, and actually I'm going to put it before because I'm going to put the methods in alphabetical order. Okay, so here I'm going to make sure that I'm starting in a line that's inside my main class but not inside any of the methods. Okay, so right here at line 21, I'm not inside the main method because the main method is ending here at line 19, and I'm before I've started the report card method. Okay, so this is a safe place for me to start defining a new method. Okay, public lookup, and it takes a string array of assignments and an integer array of grades. Okay, So I get that defined. Okay. Now I'm gonna just run this, and I've made a mistake somewhere. Okay. So I'm just running it to make sure I haven't made a mistake. And I left out, this should be public static. Whoops, over here on line 21, this should be public static void. Okay. So Micah, for you to catch up, what I did is I changed report card here. I changed to lookup, and I'm defining a new method called lookup. Okay. So now I've defined my method. So if I run it, I want to run it again to make sure I haven't made any syntax errors. Okay. And I haven't. Okay. So my code is compiling and running, so I know that I've defined my method in the right place. Okay. It doesn't do anything yet, so I'm not actually gonna go through the program. I'll just stop it. Okay. So now here, what I want the lookup to do, I'll just make a couple of notes here. I'm going to say while loop until user enters quit. Okay. So I'm going to do a while loop with sentinel value. Okay. And then I'm going to say inside the while loop, prompt user for assignment name. Okay. So if assignment name is found, print the grade. Okay. I'm going to say if user enters all, then print report card. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. So we're actually touching a little bit here on some input validation. Okay. Input validation is basically taking the data that's being entered by the user and checking it to make sure it's valid, and then taking some action based on that data. So in this case, my input validation is going to be, if they enter quit, then I'm going to exit the lookup and I'm going to end the program. Okay? If they enter an assignment name, I'm going to try to look that up in my array, and then I'm going to print out the grade for that assignment. Okay? If they enter the word all, then I'm going to run the report card method. So I'm doing a little, if they enter something other than those, then I'm going to say, I don't understand what you want. That's not a valid assignment name, something like that. Okay? So I'm going to be prompting the user for some values, and then I'm going to be doing some checking, and then doing some specific work based on what the user enters. Okay? So that's my pseudocode-ish. Okay? This is very informal pseudocode. Okay? But it's getting the job done. So we're going to start. First thing I'm going to do is the while loop and the prompt for the user. Okay? While true. Then why am I doing while true here? And the answer is because I want to continue until the user enters quit. Okay? Because I'm in a method, because I'm in a subroutine, a module here, lookup, as soon as I issue a return statement, then that method is over. Right? So I can exit my while loop and my method at the same time by just using a return statement. Okay? So what I can do here is I'm going to say while true, so my method is just going to run in perpetuity until I hit a return statement. Prompt the user, which assignment do you want to see? Okay? Got my blocks out of line there. And then I'm going to say string name equals, let's call it assignment. Okay. I'm switching to the singular here because I asked for which assignment do you want to see. I'm going to look that up in assignments. Okay, so this is a singular assignment. Okay. I'm going to do a read line. Okay. Now the first thing I want to do is check for my special sentinel values. How many sentinel values do I have here? I've got two. I've got the quit and I've got all, right? Both of those are special values that will do something. And if it's not quit or all, then I'm going to try to look it up in the array. Okay? So first things first. If assignment equals, and I'm going to do to lower, okay, equals quit, okay, then I'm just going to return. And I'm done. Okay? So now I should be able to run this. And what should happen is, I should get this error, I should not get that error. Line 29, the left-hand assignment. Oh, this should be a comparison. I put an equal value, which is an assignment. Wanted a comparison. Okay, I wanted equality, not equals. Okay, how many assignments? So let's see. I have 3. Homework, 100. Enter the name for the assignment 2. Tests, 100. I really don't care what I enter here because I'm not trying to test this right now. I already know this works. Which assignment do you want to see? So if I type something, okay. So I haven't hit the sentinel value, so I'm just keeping in my loop. If I type quit, I'm going to try to type it uppercase because I should get it case insensitive because I did it too lower, right there at line 29. So if I type quit, then my program is over. Okay. So the code that I've written is working. So I have a while loop that's running, and it's running until I enter the word quit, and then it's ending, and it's exiting the method and exiting the program. Okay. So that part works. So now I'm going to do the all. Okay. I'm going to say if assignment equals all, and I'm going to do the too lower again because I want this to be case insensitive. Okay. If it equals all, then call the report card. Okay. So now I can run that. How many assignments? 3. Homework 100. Tests. I'm just going to do this really fast because what assignment do you want to see? All of them. And I get my report card. Okay. Now I've got a little bit of spacing here. So what I'm going to do is before I ask the assignment question, I'm going to do a blank line in there each time. Okay. And then here, right before I print out my report card, I'm going to go ahead and put up another blank line in there. Okay. Just so that when I run it, it'll be spaced out a little bit. I'll be able to pick that stuff out of the output. Okay. All right. So I want everybody to catch up here because we're about to do the lookup work that we're going to want for the homework. So I'm going to give you a second to catch up here. Okay, so I'm going to continue here. So we have our sentinel value, so I can either quit the loop or I can print the whole report card. So now what I want to do is let the user type in an assignment name, and I want to just print out the grade for that assignment. Okay, so if the user types homework, I want to say the assignment for homework, the grade for assignment homework is 100. Or if I can't find it in the array, I'm going to say that assignment name is not found. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this, okay, is I'm going to have an else here on this statement because if it's equals all, then I'm going to run my report card. Okay, oops, I didn't unfreeze the. Okay, so I'm going to type an else here. Okay, after my assignment equals all. Okay, I don't need an else here because the method will end at this point. Okay, so here on if it's not equal to all, then I'm going to do an else, which means I'm going to do the lookup. Okay, so now what I want to do here is I want to take my assignment name. Okay, I want to see if it is contained in the array. Okay, and I can do that by using a built-in method of the array called index of. Okay, so I can say integer element equals assignments dot index of, and then here I can put the assignment. Okay, whoops, yeah, that's the assignment. So that's the name that I want to look up. Okay. So let's run that. Make sure I type that right. And I've actually typed that incorrectly. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go over here. We're going to want to C# array dot index of, because I have mistyped it. I think you use the, I apologize for that. So here I'm at the C# docs, and I just want to look at some examples. And we see it's actually array.indexOf, and then I have the array and then the search term. So see this, what I'm looking at here? That's the one I'm looking at. So this says, I don't use the array name, I have to use the array superclass. Okay? So let me go back and retype that. I'm sorry about that. So this is not that, it's array.indexOf. And then I give the name of the array and the value I want to look up. Okay. Now what this returns is if I find the lookup value in the array, okay, then the value of element is going to be the element where I found that entry. Okay. If the value of assignment is not found in the assignments array, then element is going to be -1. Okay. And if we look at the C# documentation, we will see that. So because I'm running, I'm essentially looking at this input. Okay, it says returns the index of the first occurrence of value in the array. Okay, so I'm calling index of, here's the array and here's the value. Okay, and it says the array is a one-dimensional array to search. The value is the object to locate in the array. In this case, it's a string. Okay, the return is the index of the first occurrence of the value array if found otherwise the lower bound of the array -1. Okay, so what's the lower bound of my array? It's 0. Okay, so I'll get a -1 if it's not found. Okay, does that make sense?
No.
So it's doing a lookup. It's going to search the array. Okay, it's going to go through the array one by one. And I want to find the first element that contains the word homework. Okay? It's going to check element 0. Does that equal homework? No. It's going to check element 1. Does that equal homework? No. It's going to check element 2. Does that equal homework? Yes. So then it's going to return a 2. So now the return value is going to be 2, and that's going to be stored in my variable called element. Okay? Now if it doesn't find it, it searches all the elements in the array, and it doesn't find it, my return value will be -1. It's a sentinel. Okay, so now I do an if statement. Okay, so here element, and I've just named that because contextually that's the element number of what I found. Okay, so I'm going to say if element equals -1, then this means that I didn't find it. So my output needs to be console.writeLine can't find that assignment. Let's do it this. Can't find assignment named assignment. Okay. Let's put my interpolation character there. Okay. Otherwise, I'm going to say I'm actually going to print out. Now I'm going to do my parallel lookups, and I'm going to print out a message. Console.writeLine interpolation assignment of assignment has grade of grades at element. Okay. Let's run that and see if I made any mistakes. Okay, how many assignments? 3. Homework, 100. Tests, I'm putting 3 blanks there. Unity grade for test, 98. Final, 3 blanks, 99. Okay, which assignment do you want to see? And I'm going to say, I'm going to type quiz. Okay, which it shouldn't find a match, right? Okay, can't find assignment named quiz. Which assignment do you want to see? Homework. Assignment homework has a grade of grades element, so I've made a mistake here. Oh, I forgot to put my interpolation symbol. Okay, So now I'm going to stop that and run it again because I made a mistake in my console.write line. Homework. Whoops, let's start that over again. Homework. Ugh. Okay, one more time. How many assignments? 3. Homework. Integrate for homework, 100. Tests. Integrate for test, 98. Final. Integrate for final, 87. Which assignment do you want to see? I want to see the final. Can't find assignment final. That's because it's final with 3 spaces after it. Okay? Final has a grade of 87. Okay? Homework. Homework has a grade. Okay, and you can't see it because it's behind the little question mark. Okay? But it's got a grade of 100. Which assignment do you want to see? Tests. And I put 3 blanks in there. Test has a grade of 98. And I enter something else. I cannot find that assignment. I enter all. And I get my report card. Okay? Now notice here that if I type homework, I need to match the case, okay? If I type homework with a lowercase h, okay, it's going to say it's not found, okay? And why is it not found? Because homework with a lowercase h is not the same as homework with an uppercase h, okay? So if I want to do, if I'm going to do a case-insensitive match there, I'm going to have to do a workaround of some kind. Okay? So, but let me stop here and let you guys catch up. Okay, so let's keep going. So what we've done here is we've done the lookup on the assignments array, okay? But we've done it with exact match. Okay, so we're looking up the whole word homework, the whole word tests, okay? The homework assignment that you have for that's due is 6B, and it requires you to do a partial match, okay? So if we look at the homework assignment, it says, given these arrays, I have a set of parallel arrays, names and numbers, one set of 2 parallel arrays, okay? And the assignment is prompt for the name, so I want to enter John, and then I'm going to look up the word John. I'm going to look up John in the names array. I'm going to find if John exists in the array. I'm going to print out John's phone number. Okay, but I have this special case where I have to be able to do a partial match. So here, if I enter CHA, then I want to match Chase. Okay, so now I can't do that with the index of. Okay, so now I have to actually look at each value. Okay, so we want to do a partial match here. So let's come back to our code. Okay, so now we just spent all this time getting this code written, right? And now we're going to undo it. Okay, but the part I'm going to undo is really just this index of. Okay, because once I've figured out an element, okay, my if statement here is going to work, and it'll just print. Okay, so all I really need to do is change the way that I'm defining element here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment out my index of, because I might want to look at that later. Okay, and then I'm just going to define element. Okay, I'm just going to define it. Okay, and then I'm going to do a while loop here. Okay, and I'm going to say it's actually a for loop. I'm going to do for each string assignment, oops, lowercase s, oops, I can't use assignment because it's the same variable that I use. So I'm going to say for each name in assignments. Okay, so I'm doing a for each here. Okay, a for each is just a shortcut on a for loop. Okay, so what it does is instead of doing for counter equals 1 2 3 4 5 0 1 2 3 4, it's just going to run a for loop, and it's going to assign assignments at 0 to name, and then it's going to run the for block. then it's going to assign assignments at 1 to name and run the for block. So it's just doing it's doing a little shortcut for me. Okay? So every iteration of the for each block, name will be assignments at 0, then assignments at 1, then assignments at 2. And the for loop will run once for each element in assignments. Okay? What I can do here is I can say if assignments, actually if name dot contains, actually it's going to be string dot contains. String dot contains, actually let me look that up. Let's look up the string dot contains, because I'm sorry, I've been jumping back and forth between languages and the syntax is a little different. And so it's tripping me up. So the string.contains method is built in on the it's built in on the string data type. Okay, so I don't have to do string.contains. I can just do if name.contains assignment. Okay, so now what we have, whoops, don't want that. So now what we have, if the variable name, which is going to be homework test final, it's going to be each of the values of my assignments array. Okay, if that value contains any of what's in the assignment. Okay, so if I type HOM for the assignment, that's the one I'm looking up. Name is going to be homework. HOM will be contained in homework, and so this will be true. Okay, so name.contains returns a Boolean value, true or false. Does it contain or does it not contain? Okay, so this is how I can do my partial. So if it contains, I can say element equals. Oops. Well, there's a messed up there. So here, I now need to know which element is in this. Okay, so I want to say here what I want to do is element equals counter, but because I'm using a for each, I can't do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to move my right line block up here. I'm just going to say if it contains, then print this. Okay, and I'm done. Okay, so I've done a lot of redo there. Let me make sure my blocks are still in the right spot. Okay. All right, so my blocks are still good. Okay. So now what's going to happen is if I type in home, it's going to find it and it's going to print out the name. Now I have not done the reverse, okay, which is if it's not found. I'm sorry, guys. I can't use the for each loop here. Okay, so I can't use the for each loop here because I need to know which element I'm dealing with. Okay, a for each I'm losing that value of the element. Okay, let's look that up and see if there's a quick way to get that. C# for each. There might be a shortcut there. And it's not. So other languages allow you to pull out the number of the element that matches. There might be something here in C#, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do a for loop instead of a for each loop. So sorry about that. So I'm just going to do a for each loop here for int counter equals 0. I'll be right with you, Micah. Counter less than assignments dot length counter plus plus. Okay. I'm going to do that instead of my for each loop. Okay. So now what I have, instead of name here, I actually have to say if assignments at counter dot contains. Okay. So let's try to do that. See if I got that right. Assignments. Misspelled word. Okay. How many assignments? 3. Homework 100. Tests 98. Final 89. Which assignment do you want to see? I want to see home. I want to see something that matches home. Okay. It says assignment home has a grade of 100. I really want to say homework there. Okay. So here I can say assignment in my message. I'm going to say assignments at counter. Let's stop and run that again. 3 assignments, homework 100, tests 100, final 98. Which one do you want to see? I want to see homework. And so now it's doing a partial match. Okay? Because instead of doing an index of on the array, I'm iterating over the array each time, and I'm looking for a partial string match using the contains method. Okay? So we're kind of doing some exploration across the built-in methods, the built-in functions. Okay? Now, the last thing is that if I don't find it here, so if I type to something that's not found here, I don't get any response. But I want a message that says, hey, I didn't find that. Okay? So what I need to do is I need to keep track of whether or not I printed something here. Okay? So up here in element, I'm just going to say bool found equals false. Lowercase f. Okay? And here if I find something, I'm going to say found equals true. So I'm just keeping track of whether or not I found something. Then after my for loop runs, I'm just going to do another if statement. If not found, then print out this message. Okay, let's try that. How many assignments? 3. Homework 100. Tests 98. Final 75. Which assignment do you want to see? Partial match home. Found that. Let's try tests. Found that. Let's try some gibberish. It says can't find an assignment matching. Okay? So now I've done a partial lookup. It's still case sensitive. Okay? So if I want to, I'll challenge you to do a case insensitive match. And the way you do that is by by doing a 2 lower or a 2 upper in your test. So right here, if assignments.counter contains assignment, you just want to do 2 lower or 2 upper on both of these. Okay? So I'll let you catch up and try that on your own, and then we'll do it together. Okay, so let's keep going. So I'm starting the video back up again. So you notice there that when I made that code change, I changed a lot of code, right? I typed something we were doing the index of using that variable element, and then I went and changed it to do, because I wanted it to do a partial match instead of a full match. So I got rid of my index of, and I wrote a for each loop, and then I erased the for each loop and wrote a for loop. So I've done a lot of code change there. Okay, so if you want to see the various versions of the program as it's been written, you can roll back in the video and you can find each point where the program was running at that state. But at this point, we're doing a partial match on any of the values. So when you're changing code like that, you got to make sure that you're keeping up with your indentation, that you're keeping your blocks straight, and changing code is normal. I mean, we wrote all that code and it worked, but then we found a use case that it didn't work for. We wanted to do the partial match, and it didn't work. So we had to throw away what we had done, and start over. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just how it works. Okay. Last thing I want to do is I want to do a case insensitive match here. Okay. So here, if I type home with a lowercase h, I want to match homework with an uppercase H. Okay. So I want my match to be case insensitive. So what I'm doing here is I'm matching assignments encounter, which is a string, and I'm asking, does it contain assignment, which is also a string? Okay. So I just want to convert each of those either to lower or to upper. It doesn't matter which, as long as it's the same on both. Okay. So here I'm going to take assignments at counter, and I'm going to say to lower, and then does that contain assignment at to lower? Okay. So I'm going to stretch this out a little bit so you can see that all in one line. Okay. So this takes this assignment counter is a string. Okay. So then I take that string and I convert it to lower. And then I say, does that string contain assignment also to lower? Okay. So I've kind of compounded my function calls there a little bit. Okay. And if I typed it right, then we should be in good shape. How many assignments? 3. Homework, uppercase. What's the grade for homework? 100. Test work. What's the grade for test work? That was a 96. Final project, 75. Which assignment do you want to see? Show me the final, uppercase F. Okay, so this assignment final project has a grade of 75. Show me final with a lowercase f. Okay, and it still matches final project. Show me project. It should still match final project. Show me home with a lowercase h. Now it matches homework. Okay. What if I just match work? I matched 2 of them because I typed homework and test work. They both have the phrase work in them. So I matched them both. Okay. I can still do all, and I can still do quit. Okay. All right. So if you were paying attention, this is the solution for 6B, okay, for that homework assignment, okay? So you're going to have to, all the code's in here, you're going to have to take this lookup code and you're going to have to manipulate it a little bit to run on the arrays that are provided in that assignment, okay? But this is what you need to solve the homework assignment for 6B. Okay? All right, so I'm going to pause for a second and let you. Okay, so this is what you need to solve 6B. So everybody should have this. You can find this in my REPL library. You can review the video if you want, but we should be good here. Okay. All right. So now let's talk. Let's shift gears a little bit and let's go talk about input validation. What do you think input validation is? Making sure that you're putting in the right data, right? Or that the data that you're reading into your program makes sense. Okay? So it really comes from this garbage in, garbage out idea. If you get bad data in your program is going to put out bad data. Okay? So we've seen this in examples of what? When we're prompting the user for an integer value, and we mistakenly type something that's not integer, right? Our program fails. It aborts, okay? And we get this big, ugly, nasty error, right? That is we need to use input validation to protect ourselves from that. Okay, so essentially what we do is we inspect the input and we make sure that it meets the criteria that we have for that particular input. And then if it doesn't, then we throw it away and we ask for another one. Okay, or we do something else. So in our console applications, we're going to be, if I prompt you for an integer, I'm going to take the data you enter, I'm going to check to make sure it's a valid integer. If it's not, I'm going to throw it away, I'm going to go back and prompt you again and say, hey, you need to enter valid integer, and keep going instead of giving you a big ugly error. Okay? Sometimes it could be that I want a valid integer between a certain range, or I need a string that has to be a certain number of characters long. But either way, what it's done is if it's invalid, it's rejected, and then I prompt you for something else, or if I'm getting data from a file, maybe I would just stop reading because the file is invalid. Okay, but what I'm not going to do is allow the program to generate an exception and to fail. Okay, so typically we do input validation with a loop. It's typically a condition-controlled loop, so a while loop. So I'm just going to continue to prompt a while loop and an if statement. I'm going to continue to prompt you. I'm going to get the input. I'm going to check to see if the input is valid. If it's not, I'm going to display an error message, and I'm going to prompt you to put the input again, and then I'm just going to keep doing that in a while loop, and then check it. Is it valid? No, print an error message, ask you again. Is it valid? No, print an error message, ask you again. Is it valid? Yes. Okay, now I can continue. Okay? So the input validation is typically going to be a loop, and we'll shorthand it, we'll call it a validation loop. Okay? Because the purpose of the loop is to collect valid input. So it's going to be a validation loop, or an input validation loop. Okay? And by the way, if you're writing a lot of these, it's very useful to put them into a function. Okay? Because now you have more code. Instead of just console.readline, now you've got a while loop with a display and a read line and an if statement and an error message. So now I've gone from 2 lines for an input to 7, 8, 9 lines, depending on what my validation is. So I'm going to start putting all of these input requests down into a function. Okay? So then in my main module, it's just going to be set the input to get valid input. And then all of my valid input rules are going to be in a function. It's going to be away from my main module. Okay? So I'm going to start writing a lot more functions here, okay, to do my input validation loops. Okay? So this is a pattern of an input validation loop, and you can see this is pseudocode. Okay? And we're using a priming read methodology here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my display, and then I'm going to do an input. Okay? And then I'm going to do a test while the score is less than 0 or the score is greater than 100. So in this case, what I want is I want you to enter a score that's between 0 and 100. Okay? And so if the while loop runs, if while the score is less than 0 or greater than 100, then display the error, hey, you can't do that. Enter the correct score. Okay? And then we do the input again. Okay? So here we have input score. While the score is outside of my range, then display the error message and then prompt again. Okay? If the first time I do the input and my score is between 0 and 100, then the while loop never runs because the condition is false the first time it's tested. So then I just skip the while loop completely, and I'm done. However, if the score is out of range, then I run this input over and over and over again. Okay, I loop around here. Okay, so this is an example of pseudocode example of an input validation loop. And in this case, what I'm validating for is to make sure that you've entered a valid number between 0 and 100. Okay, what I didn't check here was to make sure that you actually entered a valid number. So I would have additional validation to make sure that you didn't type letters or something that wasn't a valid integer. Okay? All right. So we're going to write functions. So for complex validation, which is almost all of them, even the simple validations can be kind of tricky. Then there's not a lot of code to them, but it's more than 2 lines of code. So we're going to put all of those validation functions in a loop. Okay? And then also we have other so sometimes we just make sure you're entering valid numbers, that they're in between a range. Sometimes maybe like a password validation. I want to make sure you enter that your password was at least 8 characters long or 10 characters long, and it had an uppercase character. Maybe I want to confirm that that your password and your password verification that they both match, that you entered the same twice, that kind of thing. So we have all sorts of examples where we're going to do input validation. This is defensive programming. We are protecting our program from aborting with an error. Okay, if the user provides bad data. So we're protecting our program from the user mistyping something or maliciously typing something wrong. Okay, so this is a form of defensive programming. So you need to have this because the worst thing that can happen is your program halts and you get a big ugly error, because then the user stops using it, and if I'm the teacher, I stop grading it. Okay, so we don't want that. Okay, so these are just some common errors. Typically, zip codes, state abbreviations, dates are valid dates. If you ask for a starting and an ending time, you want to make sure that the starting time is before the ending time, things like that. Hourly wages and salary amounts, you don't want to, what's your hourly wage and it's $1 million an hour? Probably not, right? So the actual validation that you'll do is contextual on the problem, okay? But you have a lot of different kinds. We have some C# helpers, okay? We're just going to run through this real quick, and then we're going to pick up here on Thursday. So we have this, instead of doing a convert, okay, we can use this method called try parse. Okay, what try parse does is it takes the string value. So we have an example here of how it would look. So we define a variable named x as an integer. We prompt the user for a value, console.readline. So now entry is whatever the user entered, and we're gonna try to convert it to a number. We then call this int32.tryparse. So we're using the int32 superclass, just like we use the convert superclass. Okay? And so we're going to do the try parse, and we're going to send a string value, and we're going to send this special kind of variable called outx. Out here is a reserved keyword, okay? And it's x. So what this does is it says, hey, try to parse this string value entry into an integer. If it's a valid integer, then put the value in x and return true as a Boolean value, okay? If entry is not a valid integer, then change x to its default value, which in this case would be a 0, and return a false. Okay? So now if I do this, I now can say if valid, then I know that my entry was a valid number. Okay? Now I might want to do an additional check there to make sure that it's within a range. Okay? But I know that at least it's valid numeric. Okay? So my program's not going to fail. I can do the same thing with double. Okay, and it looks just like the int32, only I use double instead of the int values. Okay, it works exactly the same. Okay, here's a try catch block. I'm going to present this. You can read more about this if you want. This is another way of catching an error. It's a little bit of a sledgehammer approach for input validation. What this does is that if this fails, convert.toInt32 fails, if it gets a can't convert exception, then I'll run this block, and I can put this inside a while loop and use this, but the try parse is a much cleaner approach than this. But I wanted to just show you this so that if you see this in your reading, you'll kind of know what it looks like. Okay? And here we are at the in-class exercises, which we'll pick up here on Thursday. Okay? Yes, sir. Okay? All right, so we'll pick up here on Thursday.